Welcome to DAO Talk Interviews, a weekly podcast series that sits down with the IRL voices behind the online usernames of the leaders in the budding DAO ecosystem. Each week, we'll dive deep with an individual or individuals on what they're working on, what brought them into the DAO space, and so much more. Hosted by me, Tommy, and sometimes my friends, Frisian, Cool Horse Girl, Caden, and Ellie. Each episode is brought to you and powered by Tally.xyz, the home of DAO governance. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of DAO Talk Interviews. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to DAO Talk Interviews. This is episode 3 of our new season of DAO Talk Interviews, where we go weekly. This week we are joined, if you've been watching Tally's ecosystem highlights, you've seen us shout out Hunter. He is the inspiration, the leader of the, the short form, palatable ecosystem update content. But Hunter, thank you for joining us this week on DAO Talk Interviews. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. You're doing amazing. Appreciate the kudos there. By the way, technically I got it from Anthony Sassano, who does it for Ethereum.
Fair. Yeah.
We have to give him some props. I love to take it.
He's the OG. He's been doing it forever, man. But in my opinion, for the particular DAO specific content, you've been killing the game there. So thank you for leading the way and kind of giving us inspiration to do it. And I've started to see some, I think ENS DAO did it as well. So maybe we'll start to see a little bit more of that across the ecosystem. I think it's a really good format. But for those who aren't initiated in who you are, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, no, totally. So obviously I'm Hunter. I do community strategy at Offchain Labs. The team originally built Arbitrum and is now a contributor to the Arbitrum protocol. Technically I also, as you mentioned, do the ecosystem updates. Content creation is kind of in my blood. To me, like creating is a way of life to a certain extent. I've been creating things for actually a long time, but never officially. So even now, these ecosystem highlights, I don't get any direct benefit from, besides people maybe seeing my face all over their feed. But it is cool to see people kind of replicating it for their communities, because at the end of the day, I kind of try to do things that I'd find valuable myself. And to me, it's everyone's so busy doing their own thing, frankly, especially in crypto. So having these kind of preferably palatable, short form content things that can update you on different ecosystems is invaluable to me, right? We're like human aggregators in a way,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, you talk about how content's kind of in your blood. Give us before we kind of dive into the weeds of everything. What's your background? You talk a little bit how you're doing community strategy for Offchain Labs, but let's go back to the beginning. How'd you get into crypto? And then how'd you get into DAOs? Was DAOs your first intro to crypto? Was it something else? And then how'd that parlay into your current role with Offchain?
Yeah, totally. So it goes pretty deep, actually. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into complete detail just to keep it relatively short. But I did get into crypto back in 2017, the first kind of bull run, right around when Ethereum was still $5, Bitcoin was $300, which still seemed expensive at the time. But I've been kind of on and off in the space ever since, up until I want to say 2020, kind of right when COVID hit. Or maybe even a little before, I kind of started getting deep into just content creation on crypto based platforms, actually. So nothing on Ethereum, because back then there just weren't any, frankly. But I was doing that, kind of had a part-time job in marketing, and I essentially quit my marketing job and did just crypto content creation, reviews, tutorials, etc., full time, for 9-10 straight months. Wasn't getting paid anything. And kind of near that 10 month mark, I should say, mid 2021, I realized, okay, I got to make some money, I was still living with my parents anyways. So, I wasn't going to be desolate or homeless, but still, I didn't want to be just, leeching. So at the time, like I mentioned earlier, Anthony Sassano, I was watching his Daily Gwei videos, and to me, they were invaluable because I'd watch them every day to keep up to date with the ecosystem. And I saw him one day, I think, tweet about Offchain Labs hiring a community manager. So I said, screw it. Let me just, throw my application in there, see what I can do. Never really had prior actually experienced community managing before. But so essentially, being here, that was my first time doing it. And just kind of letting my creativity flow being here. And, working with the team has been great because they essentially give me full reins over almost anything I want to do. And ever since then, like frankly, I hadn't been I haven't been creating content the entire time here. Actually, I only really started creating it again recently. But funny enough, actually, before I should have mentioned it before, but before I joined Offchain Labs full time, and while I was still doing content creation, I was doing kind of like small side gigs for different projects. Not a lot actually, but one of the ones that I did was actually a DAO. It was Cryptex DAO, and I still talk to those guys today. They're great people, but I was essentially hosting Twitter Spaces for them. And like I remember every month I'd get paid through like a coordinate. So like that would be kind of essentially there was no like specific amount to get. It would just be kind of depending on what people think is valuable, I guess. But it was cool. It was my first experience in a DAO. Yeah.
When exactly did you join Offchain? Say it again. Around what time?
Back in like 2021, so like June or July 2021.
So pre Arbitrum DAO, right?
Oh yeah, Arbitrum DAO was like technically last year. That was pre Arbitrum mainnet actually even. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I remember people asking when mainnet. I remember that.
Yeah. So I guess dive a little bit into like what it was like in those two stages, right? Pre mainnet, pre DAO, and how have you kind of seen the evolution of the Arbitrum community into what it is today? Because it's pretty crazy right now.
Yeah, dude. It's definitely interesting. I mean, like, it's kind of funny because I think I'll say like on the outside looking in, like my perspective on crypto, generally speaking, is completely different. As a content creator, again, outside looking in, and now of course, being in an ecosystem and helping build out this community, again, inside looking out, it's completely different. Actually, I'll say like during mainnet, I was only around for like 2-3 months pre mainnet, so I was literally just figuring out how Discord worked, frankly. But I would say during mainnet, before the DAO, which was about like a year and a half at least, I would say, of time, it was really interesting because early on, like Arbitrum DeFi was essentially like a staple for the chain, and it still is today. But it was like one of the main reasons why I think a lot of people and a lot of teams kind of wanted to kind of make the move over and kind of choose Arbitrum as their home. But it's also, I think a lot of it was like essentially, I think a lot of it is how you treat people. Frankly, a lot of I remember some of the feedback we were getting early on was like, wow, this feels like Ethereum. Like it feels like how Ethereum is supposed to feel: fast, cheap, and it's especially DeFi. DeFi gets so expensive on mainnet with all the gas, really, really high gas fees. But aside from the actual technical specs of the chain itself, the fact that you had the same but even more kind of advanced DeFi protocols you could toy around with, make some money, lose some money on, is what made it so fun to like be on. And then obviously you had like the treasures, the NFTs, like the gaming kind of aspect of it, a lot bigger now than it was back then, but was kind of, I feel like Treasure was really planting the seed there for Arbitrum gaming for a long time. And like, I think for a long time, Arbitrum has essentially just been a community full of sub-communities. So like DeFi sub-community, GMX sub-community, and Treasure sub-community, a lot of sub-communities. And my job in my eyes was like, all right, how do I bring these, like, how do I bring everyone together and make them care about Arbitrum? Because back then, I remember people saying like, especially the Treasure guys, and I love the Treasure guys. I have small brains, so this is no knock on them. But I just remember back then they were like, I can't wait to fork off and make our own like Cosmos chain. I'm like, bro, what? Yeah, you guys are on Arbitrum. We got to figure out a way to make you care more about the chain that you're living on. And I think a lot of that really did come from just making sure, like, people were interacting with each other, building with each other. And I think that's like the OG, I think, kind of like Arbitrum experience, just getting people to be collaborative and open to working with each other. And I think that's why it's so big today, frankly, because I mean, it's easy to get teams to come and build on Arbitrum, to build on your chain, but it's hard to keep them there, keep them happy, and wanting to stay in a place to expand.
So like there is so much going on, and there like with it being like the most used L2, right? Like I think you tweeted this week, like you guys are approaching 1.5 million weekly average users, right? And you talk about like having everyone be able to like communicate and talk to each other and kind of create a family in a way. Like, how do you approach that? I know we talk about the ecosystem highlights, but like, is it events? Is it like, are you reaching out? Do you have a team? Like, how do you approach that and not get overwhelmed by the sheer size of the chain and size of the community?
I would say like, to me, the most important aspect, and it's like I think it's like something that carries over in probably any industry, frankly. But I think it's easy to forget that in crypto is like the human aspect of things, right? It's how you treat people, right? And that's not only on Twitter publicly, but it's especially like when you're speaking with, I mean, speaking from team to team, when you're talking about, when you're figuring out kind of what each team's priorities are and how you can make their priorities essentially, like succeed with them building on Arbitrum. And with that, like I think like the partnerships team like here is absolutely insane. In that, like, I think we have maybe like 10, 11 people, actually probably even, I think actually even less than that like manages like essentially like an entire ecosystem of teams that are constantly looking to expand, constantly looking for opportunities, connecting with one another. Like to me, that's like the bread and butter, I think, of essentially the entire ecosystem. Because I've heard of a lot of teams that just end up leaving whatever chain they're on just because they get ignored by like they're essentially their main point of contact, right? And I will say that with a DAO, that's changed a lot. With a DAO now, I'd heard of teams, of course, coming to Arbitrum and never speaking to us or the Arbitrum Foundation and just making it their home and doing it extremely well. 100% possible. A ton of teams have done that. But even now, more so, like some people's main contact, for building an Arbitrum won't even be us, the Arbitrum Foundation, or anyone else. It'll be like someone from the Arbitrum DAO, or it'll be like just them kind of hitting the forums and kind of trying to figure out kind of how to make their way through the ecosystem there. It's really, really cool and really exciting to see. And it's just crazy to go from like a chain that like no one really cared about at all, frankly, like literally not at all, to like being one of the biggest ecosystems out there. And I think sometimes I put some cringy tweets out there, like as in like Arbitrum is the community, Arbitrum is me, it's you, it's the DAO, it's everyone who's building on it. And I truly mean that, because frankly, no one cares. Like if you ask me, like no one should really care about the chain infra. And in my opinion, you should care about the like the vibrant community that's building on it. Like, it's like if you're in a city, like you care about the businesses that are there, like the infrastructure that's already there, like to build on, I should say. And like the different kind of culture that's being cultivated there. So I think a lot of that is created with the like through the builders and the people that you onboard at the end of the day. And that's kind of been my take for a little while.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're familiar with Frisian, and we're shameless with our like love of Arbitrum from Tally's perspective. And like having Frisian be one of the larger delegates has been cool to like, I've been able to watch it kind of from the sidelines and see like what that looks, everything you just said, like what that looks like on a day to day. Especially like I would really emphasize how like the delegate community and the DAO community is massive for Arbitrum in regards to like, I kind of answer my own questions. Like, how do you, manage that large of an ecosystem? The ecosystem kind of manages itself, and then having you guys at the top kind of, not controlling the vibes, but like setting the standard. And even like at ETH Denver this year, I got to go to a basketball game with a couple of the guys from Offchain Labs. And they brought some friends who were just like friends and delegates in the DAO. So it's kind of cool to see like, oh, do you work for Offchain, or are you just part of the DAO? I was like, oh, just part of the DAO. So I've experienced that firsthand, both in person and online. But I love that I feel like I think you're one of the people kind of pushing that shift of like, I don't know, and I know people who are listening are probably like, hey, you don't say like don't care about the tech and the infra, like that is important, obviously. And if you follow Hunter and if you follow Arbitrum, like like they're very upfront about a lot of like, you guys are consistently upgrading the protocol and pushing changes like I feels like every other day and upgrades every other day. So like the tech and infra is top class or top tier. But I think what separates it from other L2s and other DAOs is the vibes. Like I said, you guys setting that from the top. What would you say is like, what do you think is the biggest challenge? It doesn't have to be like, let me get my words right. It doesn't have to be specific to Arbitrum, but maybe just like these large protocol DAOs. Like, what is the biggest challenge you think they face and their survivability over the next 5 to 10 years? Is it the tech? Is it the vibes? Is it a mix of both? Is it something completely different?
I think it's like a culmination of all that, which is like getting people to care, getting people to like, to give a shit in the first place. I honestly, I think that's why, I think that's why like the Arbitrum DAO to me is so incredible. Because it's kind of funny, like there isn't like, I don't know. So again, and I guess just for some context, like, you know, as somewhat before I came even to Offchain Labs, like I was one of those people that was very nitpicky with like which chains that like I truly kind of believed in. Like, I'd use like the different Alt1s, and back then there were no L2s, but the Alt1s I kind of toy around with them and mess around with. But I would know at the end of the day, yeah, they're probably relatively centralized, right? I mean, like Ethereum, frankly, is the most decentralized, in my opinion, right? For multiple reasons. From a technical perspective, from a social perspective, that's extremely important, right? You have a social layer. I think we've all kind of like a kind of agree with that. I think after a certain, I forget what year, like we were starting to like kind of recognize that the social layer is almost as important as like the technical layer is. But nonetheless, like Ethereum has the biggest of that, right? And I think that if you don't have people that care enough, then like it doesn't really matter what you're building. And that's why I think, like building that community early on was important. Without any incentives, just this stone cold like scaling, and getting people to collaborate with each other. I think it was really, really important, because now the DAO is essentially like an extreme version of that, right? You have to collaborate with people. You have to work out, whether your differences, especially when it comes to like passing proposals, or maybe not passing proposals, right? And it's funny because I remember like the first 8 or no, maybe the first like 6 months of the DAO, like no one really did anything. Like I think like literally, like the Arbitrum Foundation, at least from my perspective, kind of chose like a Switzerland standpoint, is in like, we're not going to touch this. We're going to let the community essentially do what they want with it. Which again, you could definitely argue like maybe it was a bad decision, maybe it wasn't. But I think in hindsight, I'm actually kind of glad that they did that, just because it really got people like pissed off to the point where it's like, yeah, we got to do something. Like I remember back in October last year, people were like, guys, nothing's happening. Like we have the biggest treasury in crypto, and like we got to do something about it. Whether it's like funding something or passing a proposal or whatever. And they ended up doing something about it. And I think that for that to work, though, on top of all that, you need to have it actually be decentralized. Not decentralization theater, where like we vote on something and then it's passed to a multi-sig to pass. It's like, no, like everything has to be on chain, which obviously is obviously where Tally comes in, right? I mean, obviously, having the front end for people to kind of interact with, and actually be able to digest what's being passed and what might not be essentially be passed is really important, especially when it's all on chain, right? Because you're not going to have like someone else kind of come in secondary and say, okay, everything looks good, we're going to let's slide it through. This is all like legitimate. And it's probably one of the most annoying things I had to explain to people whenever I'm talking about Arbitrum DAO versus other ones. They're like, yeah, what's the difference? It's the same thing. And it's like, no, it's not. Like most other DAOs are not like that. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't the case, but it's just how it is. But yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we can't be like, we try to be pretty neutral when we come to like communications on like which DAOs are legitimate and which aren't. And our kind of approach to that is just highlighting the ones that are legitimate and not really talking bad about the ones that are or aren't. But massive respect to y'all for like truly walking the walk. We put out so much content around it, so I'm not gonna. We'll probably link it in the show notes. But Arbitrum truly
you need
to
shill it. That's what I'm here for.
No, that's what the episode is for. That's what the episode is for. Yeah, exactly. But it's much appreciated, and I'm sure the community appreciates it as well. On that, like, how I'm really interested to know, like, how do you cipher the like fire hose of information and know what to highlight in your eco highlights each week? Is it overwhelming, or have you gotten to a point like where you have the process down? And also like, what's your cadence? Do you have like a set day you do it, or is it kind of like, okay, like today I need to do an eco highlight?
Yeah, I would say like, I guess, and just for context, for those who may not know, yeah, essentially Arbitrum ecosystem highlights, literally just like preferably like a 5 to hopefully 15-minute video, just going over the relevant things that happen on Arbitrum like that day. So the idea is it for it to be daily, from like Monday through Friday, not weekends, of course. And it was actually pretty easy to keep doing them, just because like so I would say the main thing that I've learned over the years about content creation is it's not necessarily about the quality of video, like like the camera, the mic, even though I obviously decided to go overboard anyways. You know what I mean? Yeah, I've gone overboard anyways, right? We all do. I think we all do. but it's not about this necessarily, because I could have all this and have nothing to talk about, which sometimes I do. Like I remember back in the day on YouTube, sometimes I just have nothing to talk about, but I'd have a good setup. It's more about the consistency of it. Like that's how you build up a following, and that's why I'm trying to do it like every day, just because there's a lot of stuff happening within the ecosystem every day. And like, depending on what I'm highlighting, then like that kind of adds to the schedule, right? So I try to mostly highlight like DAO related stuff, launches on Arbitrum, technical updates, anything that kind of relates to the Arbitrum ecosystem as a whole. I've tried to cover. It's getting frankly, it's always like an experiment. So like, like I'm terrible at having a cadence for anything, to be honest. But for a while I was doing it every day, only on X and YouTube, or sorry, I'd upload it only on X and YouTube, and that was it. Now I'm trying to actually do it in a way where I am live streaming it, and maybe even adding like some sort of like on-chain activity. Like last week I actually started trying this out. So one day I minted like an NFT on Prohibition. Another day I tried out a DeFi protocol. It just depends. And most of that was because I wanted to try doing it on Senko, which was also like a live streaming platform on Arbitrum. But yeah, like it's just experimenting, seeing what people like the most, and just trying to support the ecosystem as much as possible, because I figure like no one else is going to do this, because it's really hard to keep up with everything. And it's kind of more or less my job to keep up with everything anyway. So why not kind of just regurgitate everything I know onto the screen, if it helps.
Yeah. Are you seeing any like let's say it's like DAO members that are doing content around Arbitrum? Is there any like grassroots content creation, or is that still like not happening? And is that like something you would want to see?
I would love to see that. Yeah. I mean, I don't think this. So there's a couple of people who have started up their own kind of podcast or like shows around some of the Arbitrum based projects. Get Small comes to mind. He does a lot of like treasure related stuff, but also just broader Arbitrum related stuff. I'm sure maybe there's like another one or two that I'm not thinking of, but I think it's just tough because I mean it's kind of the same reason why I started creating content within the crypto space. Because like traditionally people don't really like to be like this public and this open or visible. We're literally like we're creating content in a space that says like let's like trust the math over humans, right? I forgot the phrase for that. But like I guess the point that I'm trying to say is there isn't a lot of transparency, I think, especially with like people in crypto. So I figured like early on, like if I'm one of the few that's like transparent and open with people about what I am, what I'm doing, and what I believe in, then I figure I'll probably have a little bit of an edge over most people, so that's kind of the reason why I do it.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Like, I think as much as conferences sometimes get shit on, I think the reason we all keep coming back to them is because it is that in person. Like, there's a lot of value of being in person and kind of putting a face to the name, whether you're pseudo anon or pure anon. I think there's a lot of value there, and I think that's why your ecosystem highlights it well, and why like content as well. We try to do a lot of content as well. I think that is a massive opportunity for the ecosystem as a whole. Is just creating more content, putting it out there. If you're listening, like you don't have to be super high quality. It's just putting shit out there and being consistent, and the rest will follow. So kudos to you, my friend. Yeah.
Likewise. Yeah. You started it up too, so good luck.
Appreciate. Yeah, exactly. What's on the table for the rest of the year for you and for Arbitrum, and what are you excited about? What can you share? I know there's things you probably can't, but what should we look forward to?
I would say so. There's a couple things from like a technical side. I mean, like you're familiar with it probably as well as I am. Like, there's two upgrades coming to Arbitrum chains that are going to make I think a really really big difference in how we look at layer twos and scaling. Both of them are actually live in the Arbitrum DAO forums, since both of them, if they're essentially have to be passed through the DAO to be implemented to mainnets. So Stylus is one of them, which is the ability to write smart contracts in Rust, C, C++, with full composability between like those and Solidity, which is really cool. So that's already in the forums. And then Bold, which was actually posted on the forums, I think today, essentially is bringing permissionless validation to Arbitrum chains. And that's a really, really big one because that brings Arbitrum that much closer to stage 2 decentralizations, according to Vitalik's spec. I think there's only like one other thing that I think like for stage 2 for the Arbitrum chains to hit, but it's really exciting because I think it's really easy to say you're going to do something and then just kind of just take as long as you want, I guess, to do that thing. And to me, decentralizing is just so important. Like that's why we're doing this stuff, right? Otherwise, we could just be running AWS servers and like creating DeFi on that. Well, probably not. Amazon probably wouldn't let us do that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no.
So yeah, that's important. Like, it's a combination of two. It's a combination of like innovating with stylus and actually decentralizing with bold. That to me is so exciting. And also you see a lot of the layer 3s coming out now. I'm excited to mess around with those. But I would say from a community standpoint, I'm really excited to see more of the Robinhood integration kind of with the ecosystem. That announcement was put out during ETH Denver as well, actually. But I think seeing more like collaboration between like traditional kind of Web 2 the finance and more of kind of Web3 finance and just kind of the crypto audience in general, I think is going to be a really interesting kind of an environment. And that Robinhood integration, I think, is going to be really cool. Yeah.
Dude, I forgot about that, and I'm so fucking excited for that. I've had issues with like banking and like deplatforming and just like with crypto, so I moved to Robinhood a few years ago, and it's been great. So I'm super excited for that, especially as like Arbitrum is my main chain of choice. No,
Nice.
Not trying to shill.
Yeah.
It just is because it's that good. So I'm excited to see that. And also, like I echoed it earlier, but like you guys are constantly walking the walk and upgrading. Like I feel like it's every day I open Twitter and there's something new, or I'm hearing something in the pipeline in the Slack. So I'm super excited for this year and the years to come.
Let's see. I mean, it's frankly, I think it's a mix of everything. It's just like a lot of moving parts, right? Yeah. Like, frankly, and the other thing I should mention. I mean, kind of a shill, I guess. But so yeah,
it's
whatever.
Fine. It's just a podcast. Yeah, you're good.
Right? Is definitely seeing more participation in DAOs, but like Arbitrum DAO in particular, right? To me, like if we can like start to like flatten the curve of like how many of like the kind of like the power the delegates have, and start to bring in more perspective from different kind of just people that that maybe care more about one sector or another sector, like art versus DeFi or gaming versus something else. I think it'd be great. And I think all the tooling that like you guys have on Tally is like super important. I mean, frankly, like just understanding the differences between the DAO, the Arbitrum Foundation, and everyone else is confusing enough for most people that aren't in the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So just simplifying the stuff as much as possible and making the onboarding easier, I think, is like probably going to be one of the biggest challenges that we'll have to face, just as a community generally.
Yeah, for sure.
But very excited for that.
Yeah, I know like you guys have made and I'm saying you guys like you're the one. I know it's like not just you, and it's off chain in the entire DAO, but like you mentioned, like it was pretty heavy DeFi in the beginning, and then you have like your treasure and other like pretty large gaming swaths in the Arbitrum community. I remember at ETH Denver, like you guys made were you at ETH Denver?
I was at ETH Denver,
yeah. The event you guys did at was it Shake Shack? I think you guys had like some pretty sweet like real life arcade setups with some of the like gaming protocols on Arbitrum. That was pretty sick.
Yeah, no, it was so yeah. So the Arbitrum Foundation, I think they hosted that one, and they hosted gaming related as well. They hosted they had a booth at GDC, the like gaming developer conference in San Francisco. I think it was pretty soon after that one. That was also huge. I think it was essentially the only chain there besides I think it was Avalanche was also there. But like, yeah, I mean, I think gaming is one thing that the ecosystem is starting to like really rally behind. I mean, I think you saw like there's like a $400 million AIP, I think, going up, probably on Tally soon, of course, on chain, relatively soon. So like, I think that's like another sector that like, I think, it's been growing in Arbitrum for a long time, but hasn't really been like, people point at Arbitrum and say most people say DeFi. Not a lot of them say gaming yet. But I do think like the culmination of all these different things is going to get people to start realizing, okay, Arbitrum tech is probably going to be that the tech of choice to deploy gaming gaming apps on. And I think a lot of them will be L3s and their own chains, to be honest, because a lot of them need their own like throughput and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm very excited for all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so smart going to other like non-crypto events, and even just having the opportunity to do that. Like I feel like some chains wouldn't even think to do that because they don't really have anything to provide. But I feel like Arbitrum is hopefully going to be the one that kind of transcends the bridge between the traditional like Web2 gaming world and the Web3 gaming world. Because I've yet to see that happen. But I'm excited about it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I don't know. There's like a lot of good games. Like frankly, I don't know if you saw it, but like the booth essentially had a bunch of like Arbitrum based games there. So like nothing about blockchain, nothing about crypto was mentioned at all, like in the marketing there. People would just come up, play the game, see it was cool, and then hopefully they'd ask the question about like what Arbitrum is, because Arbitrum was the name was plastered everywhere, but there was nothing else. And that's when you have to break it down, because a lot of these guys don't like crypto, right? I mean, like this is an audience that it's like when you mention crypto, they're like gasp. Like literally, someone like accidentally clicked like connect wallet on one of the screens, and they're like, "Oh, crypto," and they walked out. So like that's what we're dealing with here, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when you break it down and explain it to them, it's like you're essentially giving them ownership back of their assets versus trying to monetize them. A lot of them kind of come around to it, but it's going to take a lot more than that.
Oh, that's for sure. It's going to take a lot of time, for sure. All right, I'm not going to let you not talk about your podcast. So, what is Beneath the Layers?
Oh yeah.
Of course. Yeah, talk about it a little bit, and then we can wrap this thing up. But
appreciate the shill. There you go.
Shill Zone, because it's a great pod. I want people to know about it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, dude, that's been a hard one to actually get off the ground. But no, so Beneath the Layers is essentially a podcast that I run at Offchain Labs that pretty much just highlights like some of the more notable builders and entrepreneurs in the crypto kind of Web3 space. We've highlighted like some really cool builders already. More recently, we had someone on from the Graph, Edge Node building the Graph. We had someone from Espresso Systems, Starkware, even some folks actually from Offchain Labs as well. There's a lot of interesting people that have like cool backgrounds that you wouldn't really think about, like, I don't know, asking them about, which is kind of the whole kind of idea of like Beneath the Layers. But yeah, it's really cool because I think a lot of it culminates to like just kind of like breaking the boundaries, like figuring out kind of like what we need like 10 years before we actually need it for some of these guys, and just like, you know, just building like just straight up. So yeah, definitely a really cool a podcast to run, just because I get to speak to a lot of like very interesting people and hear their perspectives on things, you know? Yeah.
We try to keep ours pretty short and sweet, pretty DAO specific and niche. Like we're always going to be a super niche pod, but what I really like about yours is they're a little longer episodes, and they're pretty comprehensive. You get a little bit of everything. Like you said, you get to talk to people who, maybe aren't like your typical podcast guest for a crypto podcast. So if you're listening to this, definitely go check that out. We'll link it in the notes. How often do you release? You do every week, or try to do every week, or is it just come and go?
I wanted to do like every other week or something, but it's just so hard to like get the guests and plan it. Like,
right, yeah,
probably my fault. I try to like juggle a million things at once.
Yeah, dude, you're doing so much. Like, don't feel bad about it, man. Every episode's a banger, so it's almost better. It creates a little bit more of a demand for it, for sure. Well, my man, thank you for joining. Where can people find you if they want to get in contact with you or see your content that we've been talking about, and learn more about Arbitrum, Offchain Labs, the DAO, etc.?
Yeah, no, you can find me on, I mean, probably X. Twitter is most likely the best. It's twitter.com/bfreshhb. I'll technically also on YouTube, and of course Senko, if you're into live streaming. Is there anything else that I'm missing? No, I think those three are fine. I'm actually on Warpcast too, Farcaster.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna look into Senko, because we've been thinking about doing some live stream stuff for the pod. So I'll check that out for sure.
Get a lot of tips and stuff like that.
Nice.
You know, some of the things that you can be tipped are a little questionable, but it's fine.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Sweet, man. Well, thanks again for joining.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. We'll link everything in the show notes if you're listening, and we look forward to the future of Arbitrum and more content from your end. Thanks again.
Appreciate it, man.
Peace.